week's coffee talk. My name is Seeger-Wenske. I'm a speaking coach, and for those of you who've never joined a coffee talk, I created those coffee talks because I believe we speak to connect, and the spoken word creates connection. So that's why every week I'm inviting inspirational women who do really amazing work in the world, and we'll just have a casual talk about what they think is important, and then they share their wisdom, and we just take it from there. So it's really informal. It's very fun. We have coffee, at least I do. There you go. And this week we have Pascale. Pascale, I tend to slaughter last names. Like in German, I would say Scheurer, but I don't think that's how you would say it.
Which would be correct in German. It's a Swiss name. So in French it would be Scheurer. In German it would be Scheurer, and in English we pronounce it Scherer.
Scherer. Okay.
So unpronounceable in 3 different languages.
I was thinking about this. I thought, is it like Skura? Like,
yeah.
I came up with all these really weird things. So anyway, Pascale is an executive coach, and in her work with companies and entrepreneurs and individuals, she noticed that confidence is a huge struggle in men and in women. And that's why we're speaking today. And she's going to share her top 3 strategies with us. So Pascale, before we dive in, tell us about yourself. Like, why do you do what you do? What's your story?
Yeah. Well, I have been an entrepreneur since I was 9 years old. I was one of those kids hustling in the playground.
Lemonade and cookies?
So I had 2 businesses. And one was selling these rubber bracelets that were really fashionable at the time. We're talking the 80s. And I realized that there was this place where I could buy them, a wholesaler, and I could buy a big box of the packets, and then I could split them up and sell them. And that different colored bracelets had different pricing because people wanted the blue ones more than they wanted the yellow and orange ones. So I kind of had this quite instinctive understanding of what was more valuable to the customers. This went on for a few weeks until the fad died. But I made quite a lot of money.
Flowers, by the way. I grew up in the countryside, and we picked flowers and sold them to the neighbor. And until one point, she said, "They stink.
Their own flowers.
Give you money." Okay.
Selling back her own flowers to her that you've cut in her garden. That was amazing. The other one I did, which was even more, I thought, well, I like creative entrepreneurship. I've always been really interested in creative entrepreneurship. I'm an architect by background. I trained in architecture. But I would draw Garfield cartoons. Do you remember Garfield?
The
little orange cat.
I do. Oh my God.
So, if you could draw Garfield well, like that gave you a lot of street cred.
Oh yeah.
A lot of playground credibility.
Yes.
So I would buy like little sticker packs from Office World or something, and I would draw whatever somebody wanted, and I would write their name in like bubble writing in different colors, and I've still got the catalogue that I had. It was like 5 pence for a Garfield, and then 1 pence for every letter of your name, and then like maybe 2 pence more if you wanted bubble writing, because that was, So it was like, these are some skills that I have, and I like drawing. Wow, people are prepared to pay me for it.
Right.
So that was a lot of fun. And actually, entrepreneurialism is in my family, in the women in my family for at least 4 generations.
Wow.
So it's very normalized in my family you would do that.
Yes. Yeah. So then how did you come to be an executive coach, and why the focus on confidence? Because there's so many other areas that you could have focused. Yeah. Why that?
Yeah. So a long circuitous route, which I will very briefly say, was architecture. I designed schools. I didn't enjoy school. A lot of entrepreneurs don't enjoy school, and a lot of creative people as well. A lot of people who are neurodivergent. School is not really set up to create creative entrepreneurs. So architecture, I was designing schools, alternative education. I was very interested myself in neuroscience and psychology, and why do we do these things that we do, and what motivates people. And I love working with clients as an architect to help them get a project off the ground, because then people will be able to go in that building and do things. And I was much more interested in the people and what they would do in these spaces than what the building looks like.
Yeah.
So That just led to me doing some courses with a great organization in London called Brief about coaching, and I was interested. So I did all their courses, and suddenly they said, "You've done all our courses. Why don't you just get certified?" And I said, "Well, I've never thought of being a coach." And they sort of said, "Really?" Like, you're obviously
Not consciously, at least. Yeah.
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 I sort of thought, actually, that's what I was doing as an architect. I was quite
Yeah.
often the client design advisor. So even if I wasn't designing the building, I was helping them to shape the project that they wanted to develop, and why. Why are you doing this? Like, what's the end goal? It's not to have a building.
Yeah.
It's to have a building that's functional because of some other reason, you know, for educational purposes or a great place to work or whatever
Right.
it is. And this, so because, you know, being an entrepreneur, I've always been attracted to entrepreneurs. I have done some coaching with job seekers, and I found that I didn't resonate with it because I've never really been an employee type of person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I can get why you want to have a job, but they would always end up talking to me about their side hustle. They would always end up talking to me about
Yeah.
this idea for a business that they'd never dared to do. And I think that's where the confidence thing came up.
Yeah.
And I've noticed a lot of difference between women and men. It's not that the men don't lack confidence, it's they're very unwilling to talk about it. Whereas
Yes.
women are quite willing to say, you know what, my confidence is in the gutter.
Yeah.
I
No,
don't
they,
believe in myself. I have
yeah.
terrible imposter syndrome. It's really holding me back. We're
Yeah.
quite happy to just talk about that.
Yeah. I agree.
Which is like the inverse, because they have the confidence to talk about their lack of confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also more accepted. Like when I, as a woman, say, you know, I struggle with my confidence, people are like, yeah, talk to me about it. But as a man, I feel like they don't have, almost like they don't have the permission
Yes.
culturally
I
or
would definitely agree
in the
with that.
society
Yeah.
place to talk about that, which is
Yeah.
kind of sad.
So what men will talk about with me one-to-one is very different from what they will say in the group.
Yeah.
And we had a group program,
Yeah.
and they were very reluctant to reveal that within the group. Obviously, I'm not going to out anybody, but I was thinking I know it was very noticeable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, I think a lot of issues with confidence do start in school. I think they are. I mean, we could go into why women naturally. I'd say it's less, if we frame it as being a lack of confidence, that sounds like a lack. It sounds like a problem that we have. But actually, if you reframe that and say, confidence is about whether you're going to be accepted by other people quite often. And
Oh, yeah.
women in general
Yeah.
have, you know, it is a stereotype, but
That's
I think
okay.
even on the DNA level, we are more likely to respond to what other people think and try to find a consensus.
Yeah, I can see that in my work as, yeah. Definitely. And
You know, and I actually identify as non-binary. So obviously I look female.
Yeah.
I've had 2 children.
Yeah.
But I've always realized that I wasn't a very feminine kind of, I wasn't kind of a tomboy particularly, but you know, I'm neurodivergent, so there is a whole group. About 20% of people actually are either sort of more of a slightly male type of character, like a male brain in a female body, or a female brain in a male body, loosely. And there's obviously a lot of grey area, much more than people realize. I didn't even know non-binary was an option until about 5 years ago. And then I was like, oh, that makes sense, because I've never really identified with kind of, I didn't join kind of the women entrepreneurs group. I was like, what is this thing about women? I don't seem to fit in there either.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those issues, I think the issues around, you know, just the genetics of it. So I wouldn't frame that as saying, well, I say you're not necessarily unconfident. It's more that you have a strong drive to be collaborative with other people. And therefore you will ask other people's opinions. You will be influenced by other people's opinions. And if you look at it from a very sort of type A, I have to be the leader who's an absolute dictator, then obviously asking other people's opinions looks weak or something, or you're unsure of yourself. But actually, I think there's a huge strength in being able to ask other people's opinions.
Oh, yeah.
Say, I can take that on board. And you know, if I'm in a leadership role, I'm still going to do the role of a leader. But I can do that while also taking other people's opinions into account and actually bringing other people with me.
I was just interesting. I just finished a coaching before you and I started this coffee talk, and I was coaching a man, and we talked about the how hard it is sometimes for people to take feedback and to really receive feedback, because it forces us in a way to look at ourselves, and it forces us in a good way, but it's also this, oh my God, now I'm parts of me that I've been maybe trying to hide for
Yeah.
decades.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of guts to stand in that and go, tell me, like, how do you perceive me? Like, what's going on here?
People do not want to get feedback. They don't
No.
want to get feedback on their businesses. You just think that would be the thing that would create most success in your business,
Yeah.
is to get actual feedback from customers, from how
Yes.
people perceive you. People
Yes.
are so reluctant to do it. So I think on a very visceral, instinctive level, the fear of being rejected by the
Yeah.
tribe is just death. You know, that
Yeah.
if you are not supported, if you're not accepted in your
Absolutely.
tribe,
Yeah.
then so I think at this level of the brain, the back of the the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
real lizard brain,
Yeah.
is that we are a social species. And if you look into animal neuroscience, the species that are group species, they have a very different brain structure, very different processes of how they process being around others of their group,
Oh, wow. I know that.
compared to animals that live alone. They just don't have that. So it's definitely at the instinctive level, at
Yeah.
the kind of almost hardwired level.
Yeah.
Once you know that, you think, oh, actually, it's not kind of just me that lacks confidence. Actually, I'm a relational person. Being in relationship and being in partnership and collaborating is important to my survival. It's
It
important to my
is.
success, and it's a
And
good thing.
when I talk to my speakers, when we talk about, I don't want to get on stage, I don't want to be seen, I don't want to be visible, it's the same thing, right? It's like I might say something that people won't like, and then I'm going to be I'm going to be expelled from the tribe. And that's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like I'm dying.
There's
Well,
nothing more unnatural than standing up in front of a group of
yeah.
strangers and they're all staring at you.
Yeah. And you're
And
completely exposed with
yeah,
your organs, you're like what you're saying, yeah, absolutely. And I want to pick up on something that you said earlier, which I think is so interesting, that women, and I don't know how you said it exactly, but because we are more like relational, because we relate more in a way. And that's why we have a harder time with feedback or confidence. And I think
yes,
that's what you said. And it's interesting, I have two daughters and they're 2 and 5. And just like I'm at the point where I go and I've read studies where I think it's just so in us, because just seeing them and watching them like playing with their dolls. Like my 2-year-old, she's like putting the little doll under her like t-shirt and goes, "Oh yeah, baby, baby, and don't be scared." But it's like I find it so fascinating. And the boys, like whenever a boy is over, they do play with the dolls as well, but they don't have that nurturing I don't know, essence, or however you want to say it. And again, there's a gray scale, and this is black and white what I'm describing, but it makes a lot of sense that you say that.
it's very noticeable, particularly and it happens very young.
It does.
In primary schools, etc. There's a lot of talk about what is nature and what's nurture between different
Yeah,
genders, and it really is very noticeable.
it is.
And obviously children go through different stages of development, and there are some stages of development, and they're very predictable. This is the thing. The stage where the girls will all suddenly start forming cliques and falling out with each other, that is a predictable stage. Around the age of 8, 7 or 8, they will just do that.
Yeah.
And then again in teenage years, there are very predictable stages,
Yeah.
which is what fascinated me, is actually these. And I'm a meditator as well. So in terms of like understanding how why we make decisions, why we actually put ourselves forward for things or we don't, all the subconscious things that hold us back. I find that really fascinating, because it gives you a lot of power if you can understand, actually, this is not my character. It's not a character flaw that I have.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's just how it is. And once people realize, oh, actually, a lot of people are like this as well.
Yes.
It's not so personal. I can do something. I can learn to work with it, with what I've got.
Yeah.
The issue of it's interesting you're saying that in terms of your daughters, that my daughters are 13 now, got twins. They're very different characters. One is much more bothered by what other people think than the other.
Yeah.
But so it does vary immensely between individuals as well.
Oh, yeah.
But it's actually a reason why girls think they're not good at maths. And there's a great book written on it by Barbara Oakley, who's an engineer and a mathematician. And she says essentially, girls are very good at language and storytelling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So when they're about 5, 6 years old, they are extremely good at everything to do with language.
Yeah.
And when they start doing maths, the girls and the boys are as bad at maths, both of them, because they've never done it before.
Yeah.
But the girls are comparing their ability in maths to their ability in English, language and literature, or German, wherever you are, but in terms of their communication skills. So because their communication skills are so good, and there's a noticeable difference of several years at that age with the same age group, but the ability between boys and girls is noticeably different. So it's a little bit like if you find sports really easy, which I have never done. So I've always said to myself, I'm terrible at sport. I'm good at art. Yeah. I'm not good at music. I'm not good at performing.
Yeah.
I'm good at maths. You know, they're comparisons. So if you're really good at something, you will feel bad at other things, even if you might be just as good as somebody else who doesn't have this very high bar to compare to. Absolutely fascinating, that thing of actually the girls are thinking that they're bad at maths because they're such good communicators.
Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense because like I said, one of my daughters is 5, and like her ability to speak and articulate has always been amazing, and the 2-year-old as well. But now my 5-year-old is starting to go, like when she's counting or trying to understand numbers, she goes, I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
And that makes so much sense.
So frustrating, isn't it?
And I always thought, why you're counting? It's all good. And then I try to growth mindset, not yet, and learn. And I'm trying to talk her through it. But it makes a lot of sense what you say. And I've never thought of it this way, ever.
Yeah, I can send you a link to the article. Barbara Oakley, she wrote a book called Learning How to Learn. It's really fascinating.
Oh my gosh.
It's all about the neuroscience of learning.
Yeah, that is
how we learn languages compared to how we learn science, for example, is very different.
Yeah. And I also read this article where, and I hope I can quote this correctly, children, like boys and girls, they were read a story. And the main character, the hero, was not, like there was no gender defined. It was just the hero. And up until the kids went to school, the girls thought, okay, the hero must be female, and the boys thought, okay, the hero must be male. And once they started school, about 6 months into school, the girls thought the hero is male.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, in a way, that was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because
it's really frustrating. One of the things that I say to people really clearly, because obviously I've trained in architecture. That's a very male-dominated field.
Yeah.
Construction is a very macho industry.
Yeah.
And now I'm working mainly in technology as well. It's a very similar thing, without the excuse that construction's just old-fashioned because it used to be all guys, and well, technology doesn't have that excuse. It's exactly the same thing playing out. So it's exactly the same kind of attitude. And what I say to women is, you do have to understand this. You can't, if you just put your head in the sand and say, I'm just going to go in there and be like everybody else. I'm not going to let gender be an issue.
Yeah.
You're not really going to make the best of the opportunities, because the reality is that you're going into a situation that is what it is. And when you understand that it is like that, it shouldn't put you off doing what you want to do. But you can then adjust your expectations and adjust how you work. And an awful lot of business advice is written by men, for men, based on men's experience.
Yeah.
So when they say things like, oh, you should be more vulnerable, listen more, servant leadership and all these kinds of things, that is terrible advice for women. Absolutely terrible advice. It's the opposite advice of what they need. So women have to do something different because the expectations on them are different. They will already be expected to be a servant. They will already be expected to be vulnerable. They will already be expected to listen. What they have to work on is proving that they can do other things.
Yes. Would you say that they would need to bring the male side more forward? And I don't even know if it makes sense to go female side, male side, or female traits, male traits. But would you say that they would have to be more male? Which I think would be okay, because I think men do have amazing traits that we can learn from, and the other way around.
And men probably need to be more female.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So
I think you
it's
kind
like,
of need to have
this,
both.
it's like this learning from each other, instead of always saying like this war, it's like, no, let's just learn from each other.
I wouldn't say that women have to be more male, but I think it's a case of understanding what is about you and your confidence and what's actually happening in the environment that you're in, the environment that you're going into.
Yeah.
If you are consistently experiencing microaggressions, being underestimated, all those things, women tend to think that it's them. They're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, actually, the response is quite often, I need to change who I am and I need to do things differently.
Yeah.
Simply because of not understanding that what's happening is largely how other people are perceiving them.
Yeah.
And you need to find a strategy for dealing with the environment that you're in, not ignoring it and pretending it's not happening, and also not trying to change yourself to be somebody else. But you just have to understand. There's a great quote, which is, the lion doesn't care whether you're vegetarian or not.
Yeah.
Right? So
makes sense.
you just have to know that you are going into an environment in which certain things are likely to be true.
Yeah.
And you have to understand how to deal with that.
Yeah.
And there's a huge amount of leadership around this, very strong leadership from Black women, particularly in America, who have been successful in business.
Mm-hmm.
And the strength of attitude of saying, these things are unacceptable, I will call them out, I will be strong in these environments.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think quite often, for people like me, we can we only have, maybe a quarter of the amount of aggression and negative expectations and everything else that Black women have.
Yeah.
So we can sort of feel like I can kind of be accepted. Mm-hmm. I can kind of be one of the guys, as long as I'm a cool girl and I don't call anybody out, I can kind of be one of the guys. Yeah. And it's not true. Mm-hmm. And also, actually, you're doing yourself a massive disservice, and you're doing everybody else a massive disservice. Mm-hmm. So I honestly think that learning from Black women in the workplace is what white women need to do much more of, because we can just hide behind our white privilege and sort of pretend that we're above all of those things. Yeah. And we're not. It's not serving anybody, because we're not calling it out. Yeah. We're not calling out racism. Yeah. We're not, in the same way that most men don't call out sexism. Yeah. It's like this. They're not going to risk their political capital on that. Yeah. On helping somebody else. It's just a fact. All of us do it. All of us do it, whether we're conscious of it or not.
Well, I think it's that comfort thing. Right? I think it's the bubble that we're in. Yeah. Because we've never had to deal with it, and it's not a good bubble. Yeah. And it's God, this can go in so many directions. I know. This is amazing.
List of my 3 strategies to boost your confidence, and we're kind of
this is over here. Beautiful. So let's talk, because you said they're like the top 3 strategies that women or men could use to boost the confidence. Like, how would you? We've touched on so many things. How would you? I don't even want to say summarize, because that doesn't even do it any justice. But like, how would you name them, and what can people do to put it into practice?
So the first one is, a while ago when we talked about this chat, I said I will ask you a question about your experiences with confidence.
Yes, absolutely.
So the first one is thinking about times when you were or weren't confident, and the relationship between confidence and competence. So actually having the skills, whether or not you feel confident in that situation. And most people think, well, if I've got the skills, I'm going to be confident. If I'm competent, I'll be confident. And if I'm not competent, then I won't be confident. It seems logical. So, but if you think of a time when you were confident without being competent.
When I was confident without being competent. When did I feel confident? I'm just kind of, you can see my stare. I'm just.
Yeah, it's not an easy question.
This is a deep question. So I'm just, so when did I feel confident? Now this is not related to my work or anything, what I'm like.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if that makes any sense, but for some reason, when I was buying an apartment, I kept visiting and they were building it at the time. So we bought it from paper in a way. It didn't even exist. So they were building the apartment building, and I kept visiting the construction site just because I was excited and I just love being there. And for some reason, I mean, I have no knowledge about building things, like zero. But I felt super confident when I was visiting the construction site. And I don't even know why, because and looking back, there's also a bit of shame. I'm like, oh God, I think I showed up in a way that I didn't really actually like myself in that moment, but I just felt confident in that moment. Yeah, that's the thing that pops into my mind.
It's really interesting. Every time I ask that question, people have such different stories.
Yeah.
And they're always very specific to a certain location or a certain activity that they were doing.
Yeah.
So the flip side of that is, what's a situation where you were competent, but you didn't feel confident?
I remember when I started, when I did some TEDx coachings at the very beginning, and I knew I had all the skills, literally a ton of skills to coach those speakers. But I felt like I shouldn't be there. There was
shouldn't be there.
I should not be there. I'm like, I'm such an imposter. I shouldn't be doing this.
So what did you think was going to happen?
My thought was, they will find out that I actually don't know anything about speech writing, and then I will, like the mind. I was within seconds. I was like homeless under a bridge.
Yeah, the whole catastrophe.
Family, like seriously, I remember I was walking into that building. I'm like, I shouldn't be there, and I should just turn around. And next thing I know is, oh my God, I'm going to be under a bridge. So, yeah, I really remember that one very fondly. It was like a visceral experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was not pleasant.
When you look at, so this is my strategies of saying, look back at the times when you felt confident, and the times when you didn't feel confident. What happens is, and I've done this a lot of times in group coaching and one-to-one coaching, invariably people will talk about an activity they were doing in a certain location and with certain other people. And the issue of confidence almost always relates to the other people. So people tend not to bring up situations in which they're actually in danger on their own. Like they might go, I don't know, rowing across a lake or something, and then there's a wind blows up and they feel they're going to capsize or something. It's almost always about the people. So for example, if I said, look, you're going to go and walk. Yeah. Imagine you're walking across a car park to get to your car. It's nighttime. It's dark. It's not very well lit. And you're on your own. Right? At what point did the confidence start dropping? You probably were quite confident when you thought about, I'm going to walk across a car park to get to my car. I mean, I've done that 100 times. Yeah. Make it dark. Make it alone. And it all starts, you start hearing the music. Yeah. Particularly for women. Yeah. And why? If there was nobody else around, would you be afraid? No. Right. So you're afraid of what someone else might do. Wow.
And that, oh my gosh, now like looking back at that TEDx thing, it was the thought of everyone, like the speakers will notice that, they will think bad of me, and the other coaches will also look at me going, oh, she doesn't know what she's doing.
Yeah. You'll get the,
Yeah. Can we just remove her? And then I'm invited back and I'm like, oh, wow, they didn't find out that, well,
but they're definitely going to find out this time.
I know.
That was
but this time I know I'm doomed. They're going to find out at some point.
Oh, it's funny, isn't it? The issue, the reason why I do that exercise is because people realize that it's so much to do with who else is around. Like I would say, I can feel confident walking down an alleyway, but I won't necessarily feel confident. I mean, I'm competent to walk from one side of the alleyway to the other one. Yeah. But do I feel confident there? No, because I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But if I'm with a friend, even if I'm with one of my daughters and they're a kid, but not being on my own, it completely changes the feeling of threat.
Yeah.
And that's how we are. That is completely inbuilt. Like we were talking about the instinct of, if you're in a group, there's safety in a group, even just two people who are not particularly, ninjas or anything. So going somewhere that's uncertain, that you don't know who you're going to meet there, you don't know who else is going to be around, doing it on your own is a lot more threatening than doing it with somebody else, even if they are not any more competent than you are. And people start to realize that actually confidence is relational. It's not something that's inside you. It's something that occurs in your environment, and particularly in the social environment. So obviously if it's dark, if it looks a bit, you don't quite see very well, it's more threatening. Yeah. But actually it's all about the other people who are around.
That makes so much sense.
So you can be, one of my, somebody I was coaching was saying that she gave the experiences of having been in a knitting group, and she wasn't very competent at knitting, but the women around were so nice, and they were knitting these amazing, complicated cable knit jumpers and everything, and she was literally trying to make a pair of socks and doing it really badly. But because everybody was just enjoying themselves, she felt very confident, knitting badly. So she had no competence, but very confident. Yeah. And another time she was in a group of artists where they were extremely competitive with each other. And she was competent at the art she was making, but she always felt unconfident in that group because there was this competitiveness. It was aggression, relational aggression going on. Yeah. And if you think back to school, classes in which there was support and collaboration, you probably feel confident to learn. You're not competent because you're a learner. Yeah. But if you're in a situation where there's relational aggression, competitiveness, and you feel like people are looking at you ready to pounce if you make a mistake, and it's the same in the workplace, psychological safety in the workplace is about whether or not you can make a mistake without being pounced on. Yeah. Whether or not you can learn. And it has such a huge influence on learning at every stage of our life.
So how would I, is simply noticing and being aware of that the first step?
Yeah, so that's the first thing, is really think back at times when you were, and focus on the times when you did feel confident, even though you weren't competent, because you can take that feeling of going onto that building site. If you were to think of that situation just before you go into one of your training situations where you feel like an imposter.
Totally.
I'm going to take Britta from the building site.
I'm going to take her. Yeah.
I'm going to put my, hard hat and boots on. Doesn't that feel better?
I'll never look at hard hats. Stay away again, Pascale.
I want to see one on your next video.
I'm up for stuff like that. So seriously. Yeah. I'm just wondering, and this is not, full disclosure here, this is not something that I'm proud of saying that. I wonder, because I felt so confident, like being on a building site, if I did not almost value the construction workers in the way I should have valued them. But that might just be me, putting too much into it, but it just got me thinking, like, how I related to them in that moment. It made me feel confident. So yeah, interesting. So
that was number one. Think of the times that you were confident or not, journal
right.
about it. You know, if they didn't just thinking about 3 situations, you will start to see your pattern very quickly. And if you talk to other people about it, you'll learn from their patterns. And, you know, this issue of it being relational, it's a big burden off your shoulders if you think the confidence is not in me, it's in the relationship.
Absolutely. I'm having like all these aha moments right now. No, seriously.
Great. And we're only on point number 1.
I know. So
there's more to come.
Pascale, give it to us.
So the second one is that there's a great definition of courage. I can't remember who it's from, unfortunately, but because I just heard it from a coach of mine. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is knowing there's something that's more important than fear.
Yeah.
You might have heard that one before.
Yeah, I've heard this.
And that's the thing, is actually saying, what is it that's more important than your safety? What is it that's more important than the safety of playing small? And I use this a lot with entrepreneurs, because we will, and I include myself, we will hide our gifts.
Yeah.
Because it's scary to go out and do marketing. It's scary to go out and do sales.
Yeah.
It's scary to pick up the phone and say to somebody, hi, I'm selling executive coaching. Do you want some?
Yeah.
And they're going to say no. Obviously, they're going to say, no, who do you think you are? That's a terrible idea. I can't believe you even tried to talk to me. You know, the whole catastrophe.
The whole thing starts.
And then they're going to go and phone up all their friends and laugh at me, you know, and then, you know.
And then I'm going to be alone under a bridge with no friends.
Exactly, yeah.
I know, I've been there. So
and a big sign saying, I tried to sell.
I know.
I'm a bad person.
Oh,
yeah. So this, the only thing that is going to get you through those fears, the way that gets around them, is having something that's more important. And that's why we do the work that we do. And I think that's what, you know, the speakers that you work with are trying to convey, that there's something more important. Why would they get on a stage in front of 300 hostile eyes, you know, with all that fear? Because there's something that they feel is important. So the more you connect with and make real that thing of why it's important, you know, do the 5 whys, etc. The feeling of courage that it gives you is incredible. And again, it's about thinking, it's just because I don't feel confident, that's not a reliable metric of whether I should do something. Okay, running across a motorway, probably not a great idea.
For most of us, it's not. I was so, and I don't know where I read it, but I read women identify with their emotions more. So whenever something doesn't feel good, we think it is not good. It must be bad because it doesn't feel good. And because we believe our emotions so much, we identify with them so much, then we're more likely to give in and go, okay, it doesn't feel good. I'm not gonna do it. Which is,
but don't underestimate how much it holds men back as well. I think women are more likely to say, okay, I can feel this emotion, I can talk about it, I can talk about it with friends, I can articulate the emotion. Men in general are more likely to just ignore it. And just not even go anywhere near it. So the number of people I work with in engineering and technology, and the reason why they're working in those fields is because they prefer to deal with things that are not people. Prefer to deal with
measurable, tangible.
Exactly.
You build it, it's done, got it,
You work things out and there's an answer and it's either right or wrong, and you get numbers that tell you whether you should take this action or another. It's none of the complexity of relationships and emotions and trying to understand the meaning between the words and all those things.
It's like, I mean,
they tend to just not do it, just don't go near it.
It's and I would think that men, instead of going, you know, I don't feel confident, they would reason themselves out of it. You know, I can't do it because whatever, but, you know, they would just find these logical reasons. And also,
I can't network because I'm an engineer. It's
something like this. Right, exactly.
It's not what I'm good at, so I'm not going to do it. It's like, well, maybe you're not good at it because you haven't done it before, because you've you're good at engineering because you've spent 20 years doing engineering.
Yeah.
You're good at, machine learning and data science because you've spent the time doing it. If you'd spent the same amount of time learning how to do business development or sales or networking or everyone's horror cold calling or standing on a stage, you'd be a lot more confident with it.
Absolutely.
But you're right. We will argue our way out. We'll logic our way out of that fearful situation.
Absolutely. And it's a classic, because you said like with women, or like it's all like interconnected, and like what's the message in between the words, da, 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 da. It's really classic. And I always laughed at it until I met my husband, when he comes home and I go, "How was your day?" And then he just goes, he gives me one word, which is good. And I go, how can you encapsulate 10 hours in one word? Like if you ask me about my day, I'm talking for an hour.
Yeah.
This happened.
And it will probably be a lot about other people. I talked to
Absolutely.
this person, we had this conversation, it was so interesting because, and you wouldn't believe, and then I was just thinking, did their daughter also go to that school? And did you know that?
And he looks at me like, have a beer. And he's a great guy. I mean, he talks a lot. It's just like these classic things of, it can't be just good. And he's like, why not? And I'm like, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
So stereotypes that we live inside are really funny.
Like sometimes it is really true, not all the time, but sometimes it's funny. So what's number 3?
So number 3 is the issue of working through your inner conflicts.
Okay.
So often the issues around confidence, around the fact that we have some sort of an inner conflict. There's something that we want, but there's something else that we want. For example, I want to grow my business, but I want to stay safe. Conflict. And as soon as somebody says to me, there's something that I want and I'm not getting it, or I'm not doing the things that I need to do to get it, then we know that there's going to be some sort of core conflict going on. There's something happening. I describe it as having one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And we do it all the time. You end up pushing and pulling against yourself.
Yeah.
And we become masters at that. And I think, that's what imposter syndrome is in a way. It's like, I want to stand on the stage and deliver this message and it's really important. And then another part of you is going, don't you dare,
Crazy. You're going to die alone on the bridge.
Exactly. One of both.
Seriously.
So, and one of the Fritz Perls, who invented the Gestalt therapy method, he used to talk about the top dog and the underdog.
Yeah.
And he would say, the top dog is the should. I call her Sheila Shoulda. You should do this. You should do that. If you were a good person, you'd be making more money. You should grow your business. You should achieve. All the messages that we get in school and from our parents about our potential and all the great things that we're going to do. So we have a lot of and that's the top dog talking. Very overt and obvious, normally, the conversation that goes on in our head. And then the underdog is the one who's going, no, don't like that.
Yeah.
And Fritz Perls said, in the fight between the top dog and the underdog always wins. Ooh. And that for me was just mind-blowing. I'm a very ambitious person. I'm a very confident person a lot of the time. I'm quite type A. I've had a lot of successes at school. I learn things easily. There's some things I'm not good at sport, but I'm generally quite confident. And I thought it's so true. The ways that we will trip ourselves up and hold ourselves back and slow ourselves down and keep ourselves hidden. Like, why do I do that? Why do I?
was just going to ask you, why? Yeah. Why do? Is it the want to stay safe? Is it that?
Yeah, it's basically your lizard brain trying to stop you living under a bridge or being attacked. Being kicked out by the tribe, and it's so powerful. Yeah. And one of the reasons it's so powerful is because it's not conscious. It's largely subconscious. So the top dog story of what you should do and all the opportunities and how all our planning and everything else, that's all top dog stuff. It's the prefrontal cortex. But we've got our monkey brain, which is the one that gets distracted. And then we've got our lizard brain, which is the, the back of the brain. And that's everything actually gets filtered through that. All our emotions, all our actual decisions get made much more by the lizard
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
the kind of Homo sapiens that's going around thinking that we're in control. So whenever you've got something where you feel, I'm putting my foot on the accelerator for my business, but actually I'm also putting my foot on the brake. I'm and it could be things like, oh, I'm going to set up going and, I want to do a TED talk for your
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah.
I would love to do this TED talk because it's going to be, logically, it's going to do all these things for me. It's going to help people, and I'm going to meet people. We're going to create partnerships and projects, and these great things are going to happen.
Yeah. All this. Yeah.
Oh, I've lost my voice. I'm sure you see a lot of this.
You know what? It's I see a lot of that, like where people really talk themselves out of approaching speaking, like on podcasts, on what, like you name it, and a million reasons. But I also, and this is part of my story, I train as a classical singer, but I didn't pursue it because every time I had to sing solo, I got hoarse.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah.
that's tension. It's quite often tension. I'm sure
It
you
is
know the Alexander technique and all the research that Alexander did
absolutely.
about how,
Yeah.
he lost his voice because he was holding on with
I
his
know.
toes. It's
Yeah.
hilarious.
I know.
But
And he spent 7 years in front of the mirror trying to figure out how he moves. That's
exactly. And realizing it's tension,
it's tension.
and
Yeah.
that is very often subconscious.
Yeah.
So that's how the underdog keeps us safe.
Yeah. Makes total
They
sense.
this little kind of, I imagine literally like a little tiny Jack Russell Terrier, just very determinedly digging its little heels in, just going, nope, not going to go, not going to do it, not going to do it.
Yeah.
And the top dog's this kind of great big bounding sort of Great Dane or something, going, let's do all these great things, it's going to be great. And the little dog's just going, no. And you can't shift it, but, well, you can, because if you become aware of these conflicts, and the thing is not to try to beat them, not to try to not beat yourself up about them, not try to fight with them. And we've done a lot of work around, shadow work and things like that together. If you can sit with that, meditate on it or journal on it, and just accept that this is going on. And it's very normal, and everybody does it. Everybody who up levels, the imposter syndrome comes back. I know people who are so incredibly successful, they don't even know what to spend their money on. They do all sorts of amazing philanthropic work. They have no reason to think that people wouldn't, love them when they walk down the street. They still have imposter syndrome. It's just something that's in our DNA, our self-protective. And I think if you frame it as saying, I am protecting myself, don't beat yourself up about the fact that you're holding yourself back. Like you can't blame the underdog for doing its job.
It's beautiful.
So it will do it. It's doing it because it's protecting you.
And there as well, becoming aware is the first step.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
It makes such a huge difference to just be aware of these things.
Yeah. I'm almost at a loss of words because this is so profound. This is so profound because instead of going, why do you do this? And what you said, beating myself up, I can just go, I'm doing what everybody else is doing, in certain aspects of my life, trying to keep myself safe. And it makes 100% sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you can work with that and,
Yeah.
but sitting with it and being able to accept that it's there
Yeah.
is probably one of the things I've got from the kind of Buddhist psychology approach of meditation of why does this work? Why does it work to sit in these very uncomfortable feelings? There's a great example. They said it was actually talking about fear. I went through a phase of burnout after my last business and depression. I had my little kids. I was working too hard. I even had, and then I discovered meditation, and then I had a 6 months of panic attacks. Actually triggered by meditation originally, and which is not uncommon. But so I really had to look at this thing of this intense fear that would come up. And even just saying it, I could feel my shoulders coming up and over. And I did a lot of research into panic and meditation, and read some amazing work and listened to amazing talks by people who've had this experience. And one thing they said was, if you generally will try to fight it, just say, I don't want that, I don't want this fear.
Yeah.
So we make it the enemy. Or we say, okay, I'm really afraid, so I'm not going to do those things.
Yeah.
And then we make it the boss. It becomes the boss of us. It's making the decisions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we are becoming, we're letting the fear lead and dictate to us what we can and can't do.
Yeah.
So instead of making it the enemy, which becomes the fight, or the boss of you, where you shrink, you have to sit with it, and that's how you can make it your friend. You can befriend it.
Yeah.
You think, why would I want to be friends with fear? That makes no sense. Like, fear is messing up my life. And it feels very horrible. Why is it here? I don't like it. But actually, if you reframe and say, the fear is protecting me, it's me protecting myself, it's all my DNA and all my ancestry and everything I've learned from all the experiences of my ancestors. All these millions of, well, I don't know if it's millions, actually, I don't know what the numbers are, but certainly tens of thousands of humans, and if you think every single one of your ancestors survived to the age of reproduction, there's a lot of learning there. Every single one, back to the amoebas or whatever, back to bacteria. Every single one of your ancestors, all through evolution, have survived that. So our protective mechanisms are very, very strong.
They are
very, very strong.
I
think with everything we've lived through, they are very powerful. So if you sit down and you say, okay, little Jack Russell Terrier dog, I'm not going to let you go out and talk on that stage, or you're crazy, you're going to live under a bridge. So thank you. Thank you for protecting me. You sit down and have a cup of tea with it. Sit down and say, okay, what are you trying to tell me? Wow, it's dangerous out there. Okay, what else? Well, you're going to look stupid. Okay, what else? Just listen. And feel where it is in your body, and put your hand where it is, and feel all that fear coming up. And which is not advisable, actually, if you have trauma and you need to manage it in a slightly different way. But as long as it's like a less than a 7 out of 10, between 3 and 7 out of 10 difficult, then sit with it. If it gets up to 7 out of 10, then you probably need to just go and have a walk and be with other people and listen to music and take your mind off it. But when you can sit with it and go, I can feel this fear, I can work with this fear, we can collaborate. I know you're trying to help me, I know you're trying to protect me. And after a while, it's like it's been listened to, it's been heard, and it just sort of goes away and has a little, like the little dog goes and sits in its little basket and goes to sleep. And then you get on with your work.
Well, it's like this, again, I mean, I keep referring back to children because it's so important in my life. But whenever I think my daughters don't feel seen, don't feel understood, like there's just huge meltdown.
It's going to be drama, right?
It's drama. It just keeps building. And the moment I sit down, it doesn't always work because sometimes it's just so intense and I just can't get through. But oftentimes the moment I say, I'm here, I see you, how can I help you? What can we do? They just go, and it's that makes me think of like what you just described. It's like it softens when we acknowledge what's going on.
I had an amazing experience actually with that. I mean, the panic attack moment was just horrendous. I think it was a fear that I'd had since childhood. A fear of going mad, a fear of losing my mind, a fear of losing control. Like, what would happen? Where would you end up if you lost your mind? Where would you be? Would you still be you? So I just had this intensity of fear. I don't know where it came from, but and at some point I just had to deal with it because it was coming up, and I was just getting panic attacks in all sorts of really strange situations. And understanding what it was, understanding how physiologically how panic attacks happen. Was a big help. But actually listening to Joseph Goldstein talking about working with fear, so he's a Buddhist teacher. He had this great talk, working with fear. And he said he was in a meditation in India, I think, for a very long meditation session, retreat, maybe a month or several months. And he said at one point, I was so consumed by fear that I couldn't go from sitting down to standing up.
Wow.
And I thought, yeah, that's what it feels like. That's what panic attack feels like. But
Yeah.
he said it happened for so long that at some point he just had to say, if it's like this for the rest of my life, it's okay.
Yeah.
And somehow he kind of it's that letting go thing. But the intensity of just being so, having this experience of fear, and it's a chemical experience in the brain. It can be induced by, animal scientists do experiments on animals inducing fear, etc. It's just very much built into various parts of the brain, chemically and in terms of electricity. So, and I had an experience like that where I was having a panic attack, and at some point I just went, I'm afraid. I said it out loud. I said, I'm afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And I started laughing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so emotional thinking about it now. I'm literally
I can.
crying
Yeah.
But it was this thing that, I was in my mind, I was telling myself, I'm having a panic attack, and what if this happens for the rest of my life? All the catastrophe.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, it was just like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm afraid. I was suddenly present to the experience of being afraid. I just went, I am afraid. And at that point, it's like I came back to myself as a friend.
That's
and beautiful. I just went, I'm afraid. And because I said it out loud, I was alone at home.
Yeah.
Because I said it out loud.
Yeah.
I was just sitting on my sofa and meditating. And I just said, I'm afraid, like a revelation. And then I burst out laughing.
Yeah.
I've never laughed like that. I just burst out laughing. And that was it. And I never had a panic attack since.
That is so beautiful.
Isn't that strange?
So strange. And I think it's this naming it, making friends with it, and also noticing I'm okay. I'm so afraid, like my body and my brain are just going wild, but I'm okay. I'm sitting here, I'm breathing.
I'd stopped trying to
control.
Fight it.
Yeah.
I just accepted this might be just how it is. This is just what's happening. But yeah, that was a tough 6 months, I can tell you. And I've also lived through burnout. I've lived through depression. Very similar types of experiences of just saying, how is depression protecting me? Well, I can't do anything. I can't go out. I can't take any risks.
Yeah.
It's not helpful. It's very dangerous. But if I can't do anything, I can't get burnt out again. And that was the thing.
Beautiful. Beautiful and not beautiful, know?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's beautiful looking back, like how you made sense of it in a way.
At the time, it was awful. I'm not gonna lie. I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
I'm not. I can relate to burnout. I'm not so much in depression, but burnout definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so painful.
Painful. It's not fun for no one around.
And part of it, you just don't know what's going on. When you're in it, you don't know that you're in it.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, it makes sense, but at the time, it's just so frightening, isn't it? So frightening to feel. It's so isolating as well. Those things, they become very isolating because I think there's a very natural tendency when we don't feel good to isolate.
Yeah.
We don't want other people to see us vulnerable.
Yeah.
We don't feel at our best.
Yeah.
And that's where things like getting ill just before a big presentation comes up, or getting hoarse, or, actors who throw up before they go up on stage. All those kinds of things.
I've noticed. Yeah,
you've probably seen all of it.
I've seen all of it. Like especially when, like in the voice training, and there's lots of breath work involved. People getting really dizzy, fainting. We did some work at some point in one of the acting classes I was teaching, where we worked with the atlas and the axis, like the joints up here on the brain, and we loosened that up, and I remember this one actor, and we must have released some sort of trauma. And he was sobbing and he was shaking. And it took, I think we were 12 instructors at that time. It took 3 of us to just create a safe space for him to experience that. And then making sure he was fine afterwards. And it didn't last long. It felt like a long time, but I think it was just about 5 to 6 minutes.
Probably
But
felt like about an
it
hour.
felt like a long time because you didn't know.
Time slows down when there's an
It
emergency.
did because we didn't know like what was happening. And then one of my teachers told the story where she was working with someone and they were releasing tension up here as well, and all of a sudden this intense nosebleed started, like out of,
Oh, wow.
and no one knew what was going on. And then afterwards, that I think it was a woman, she said, "Oh my God, I was hit with a baseball bat accidentally when I was 7 right here. And I had this intense nosebleed back then."
Wow.
And we just assumed she released what she was holding there and went back to that place, and the nosebleed.
Yeah.
It's like the body is
Incredible.
incredible. Incredible.
Yeah, and actually the amount of information that's stored in the
Yeah.
body.
Oh yeah.
Do you know the amazing book, The Body Keeps the Score?
No, I was just to say, I know the body has its reasons.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
another great one. I don't know
great
the
one. Yeah, The Body Keeps the Score. I can't find it on my shelf,
yeah,
but it's
send me the link
Bessel
because
it's about trauma. It's a
yeah.
guy who works with trauma. He's Dutch, I think. Bessel van der Kolk, or American, the Dutch origins.
Yeah.
And he works with trauma population, people who quite often people living on the streets, etc. Veterans, etc. And he talks a lot about all this work, or Peter Levine, who's in somatic experiencing.
Yeah.
Actually, that's kind of how I came to come full circle. How did I get into coaching?
Yeah.
It's from these experiences that I had from my first business, that when it was during the recession, we were working so hard to try and keep it going. I also had my kids were like just born, I had twins, and I was trying to do everything.
Wow. Yeah.
We didn't have family in London. My parents didn't live nearby. I just kept going. Like Napoleon marching on Moscow with his army. It's just decimated.
I can relate. I'm just yeah.
I'm going to keep going because that's what I was taught. That's what you do in architecture school.
Yeah.
You do all-nighters. You push. You just keep pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah, until your body tells you,
do it. Yeah.
Ain't no more pushing, and you're not going back to that until you've learned also until you've learned why you were doing that. That motivation. What is it that makes us destroy ourselves in the name of whatever?
Whatever. Like I know it's oh my gosh, I could talk forever. It's like we have to wrap up now, but let's
wrap up. I would love to just say the 3 strategies.
Yes.
Just to
just
conclude.
Please. You know what? I'm going to put it in the caption. So hang on. I'm just gonna hide this and add. Oh gosh. Hang on. Wait. Edit. Okay. Tell me.
So the first one is, think about times when you were confident and when you weren't confident, how that relates to how competent you were, and the places, situations. Most importantly, it's almost always about the people that you're with. So confidence is relational.
So all confidence is relational. Does it make sense? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah. So think back about times when you were confident and not. That's the strategy or the exercise. And notice how that confidence was actually relational in terms of how supportive the people are that are with you. How much you trust them. So it takes outside of yourself, your personality and your personal flaw, makes it into something that's actually to do with situations that you're in. Second one is, remember that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is knowing that there's something that's more important than the fear. And again, journal, exercise, talk out loud, record yourself, talk to a friend, talk to a coach about why your goals are important. And you will sort of almost sidestep the fear. And the third one is work through your inner conflicts. So sit with them, befriend them. Anytime that you feel that you've got one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake, you've got a core conflict going on. You've got some kind of inner conflict going on that's probably not conscious. And you can become aware of that by sitting with it and working through it again, journaling, talking to somebody, getting coaching, therapy, whatever it is. So your top dog and your underdog have got to start working together.
That image, that was just so eye-opening for me. And that the down, did you say down dog? No.
The underdog.
The underdog. No, I was like, no, she didn't say down dog. The underdog, yes. That the underdog always wins. That is just insane.
Pearls. Yeah, Fritz Perls said that. The underdog always wins.
That
is
is
true, isn't it?
Seriously, no, but it's so interesting. Like once we become aware, then we can deal with it. And I was not aware of that for sure.
Yeah.
And number one, neither, like all confidence is like that really is relational. I was never even aware of that. That's huge.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I hope it was useful. I hope it'll be useful for people watching.
So
I've really enjoyed talking to you about this.
How do people find you?
Really fun. How do people find me? So on LinkedIn, actually, I'm most active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So if you look for Pascale Scheurer, there's only one of me, I think.
Okay.
My name. And I'm very happy to connect with people and have conversations in chats on LinkedIn. And if it's useful, have a little, intro virtual coffee on Zoom, or even do like a 45-minute coaching session. So I quite regularly offer a free 45-minute coaching session so that people can get to know how I work.
Yeah.
And I focus on business growth and alignment. Ultimately, people want the strategies for growth.
Yeah.
But it's all about mindset. It's all about mindset.
It makes so much sense.
Because the strategies are the accelerator.
Yeah.
But the mindset is what can be putting the brake on.
And oftentimes people know, like consciously, they know what to do.
Yeah.
The
information's out there.
It's out there. I mean,
it's been written about how to do.
They know, like how to write a TED Talk. They like how to pitch, how to, I don't know, be on podcasts. They know, but then they just don't do it. So I can just mindset.
And nothing undermines your confidence more than not feeling credible within yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I might look at other people and say, well, do I find them credible? Or do they think that I'm credible? But actually, whether you feel credible in yourself. You say, I'm going to make a decision to grow my business, but then you're not doing it. It completely undermines your inner confidence in yourself.
Yeah, makes so much sense.
So that's why it's so important to actually do the work and, get coached through it. I think coaching is the best way to deal with this.
Absolutely.
Some people just feel like, I have to go to therapy for 5 years. Well, I'm not saying that maybe you want to do that as well, but they're kind of different things.
Yes, I agree.
You can actually just get moving.
Yeah.
And actually moving is my word for 2022. It's my word. Let's get moving. Let's take our foot off the brake.
I'm all in for movement, so that's good. All right, my love. So we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And everyone watching the replay, I think this is one of the longest coffee talks I've ever done. So that means I was hooked. I was so hooked.
Great.
So thank you so much. And anyone who's watching the replay, get in touch with Pascale. She's amazing.
Yeah, and if anyone's got questions about the things that I referenced,
drop them in the
working with fear talk, etc. I've got lots of references for those things. So.
Yeah, beautiful. The questions, comments, put them in the comments, and then we're going to respond.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Excellent.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, Britta. Bye.